Welcome to Rad Futures, Valerie Scott. I'm super excited to talk to you today. I'm interested in your story, but I'm looking forward to seeing this be shared actually by other people. You're one of the few women that I've talked to, so this is really exciting for me. As you know, we've chatted on the phone, and
Yeah.
women's issues are really important to me, especially how student loan debt affects women. Um, usually I send people a list of questions, but I'm not doing that today. So we're just going to wing it. And I think this is going to be,
Fun.
so I'm interested in your background. I know you've kind of gone into some of that on the phone with me, but just for the viewers so they kind of understand who you are, what you're up to these days, what you're doing, with regards to, student loan debt and stuff like that. Yeah. So,
Awesome.
yeah, what's your story?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Jessica, for having me on. Really excited to be able to kind of share this in a larger format. So my story is that I went to Argosy University from 2006 to 2012. I got my doctorate in psychology there. Um, while I was attending school, a lot of things were not making sense. First of all, I was very much told that it was going to cost me the exact same amount as it would cost me if I had gone to the local state school, University of South Florida, because I went to the Tampa campus of Argosy. And I vividly remember this because they even showed me on paper the tuition cost per hour was the same at Argosy as it was at USF. And so I took that to my parents to show them that I wasn't going to be scammed by going to this school because my parents had reservations. I was like, no, 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 look, the cost is the exact same. This is a good school. They're not going to gouge me. This is going to be fine. Well, what they failed to include is all of the fees, and also the fact that when you go to a public university for a doctorate, generally there's work study programs, and things of that nature that help you with the cost of tuition.
TA.
Um,
Yeah.
I was not told until my very first day of classes, where all the new students had to go into this um, first semester class with the dean of the school. And she informed us that we were not allowed to work at all while we were in the program, or we could be expelled. And
Wow.
so we started asking questions. Wait a minute, how do I pay my bills?
Yeah.
And that's when we were all handed Grad Plus applications, because when you're a graduate student, you're eligible for more student loans. And so
Yes.
she handed us Grad Plus applications and told us to go down to the financial aid office and turn those in. And that would cover, our rent, our gas, our groceries, our utilities. And that's what we were supposed to use to live. We were not allowed to have jobs. And what's so interesting is that this happened across Argosy campuses, right? But I didn't realize this until I started doing more research. So, of course, the cost of tuition, plus the fees, plus the fact that I couldn't have a job to pay my bills, right? I was told that it would cost me somewhere around $75,000 to $80,000 to get a doctorate in psychology, which is actually a pretty reasonable price
Yeah.
for that degree. Um, no, I borrowed $267,000 and I completed my program on time. I did everything I was supposed to do. And even, and most people actually end up, our last year of school is an internship. Most people on internship still take out some loans because internship does not pay very much. Um, but I did my internship with the Army. So I was on active duty while doing my internship. So I was earning pretty decent wages. And so I didn't even take out student loans my last year
Okay.
of this program. And I still left with triple what I was told it was going to cost in
So
student loans.
can I stop for a minute? 'Cause
Absolutely.
I'm trying to put pieces in my mind together. So, were you in the army before you went to this college? Okay.
No, that's actually that's a whole
Okay.
nother can of worms.
Okay.
So Argosy liked to kind of point people towards the military because as we were going through school, we're like, wait a minute, this is costing way more than you told us. And the professors, financial aid, everybody would say, oh, no, 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 no. You just go into the military and then they'll forgive it all. So
So
don't
you
even worry about it.
so there was a prohibition to work as a graduate student. You were
Yeah,
handed graduate plus loan applications,
yeah,
and you were incentivized to enlist.
yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've got emails to prove it that the Army loved Argosy because they could come to our campuses, and Argosy had 19 campuses across the country. They could come to our campuses and recruit one or two students a year from each campus. It was like shooting fish in a barrel for them when it came
Sure.
to recruiting.
Yeah.
And so there's emails, that circulated through Army recruiting of like, make sure to go to Argosy, make sure to check out those students to get them in because they knew we were saddled with so much student loan debt that
Yeah.
the promise of public service loan forgiveness after doing 10 years in the army was a pretty sweet deal,
Yeah.
right? um, but for anyone who's ever served, 10 years in the army is a really long time,
It's a long time.
particularly for a woman.
Yeah.
um, so I did not serve on active duty that long. I did serve it in the National Guard for 5 years. I did 5 years active and 5 years National Guard, but because National Guard is not full time, those 5 years didn't count. So I now have $400,000 in student debt, despite making payments consistently on income driven repayment plans simply because of the runaway interest.
So you joined the military because you were incentivized by your university,
Yeah.
which is now defunct,
Yes,
correct?
it was closed by the government in 2019. Yeah.
Okay, so they incentivized you to enlist in the military. You enlisted in your last year of graduate school, and you ended up going into debt at a total of 200. You took out 260,000. And that was what it cost, like you were paying for living expenses and stuff like that, I'm assuming, or just
Yes. And in the 5 years that I was attending Argosy, tuition rose 35%.
mm,
So they quoted me one price, but that was based on tuition prices and fees staying the same. But fees and tuition skyrocketed during that time. Tuition alone went up 35%.
wow. That's insane.
Yeah.
Um, so they got shut down. This is a group of universities, not that they're attached to any others, but I don't know about this issue intimately, but I've heard that there were like these for-profit colleges basically. So this was one of those.
It was. Yes,
And
it fell under the umbrella of Education Management Corporation that operated Art Institute, Argosy University, South University, and Brown Mackey. Art Institute in May of last year received blanket cancellation for anyone who ever attended Art Institute. All their federal student loans are being canceled because of the fraud um, perpetrated by the parent company. We petitioned the government for the same thing for Argosy students. We were told we deserved it, but we were also told they just didn't have time to process that cancellation prior to the change from Biden administration to the Trump administration. So they left us hanging.
that's crazy. I mean, this really speaks to, well, it speaks to a lot of things, but in my mind, going back to my education in criminology, you know, the state corporate nexus and um, some criminality that occurs in that nexus from time to time. And Yeah, that's horrible. I'm so sorry that that happened to you. And I know that obviously you're speaking about, bravely your own sort of situation, but you're one of many, many thousands of people who were defrauded basically this way. So how do you feel? Let me ask you this. Are you on Twitter? I don't know. You don't have to, actually, you don't have to.
I am not on Twitter. I deleted my Twitter.
So, when anyone on Twitter, I've noticed, because it gets very lively, the debates on Twitter.
Yeah.
I think that there are a lot of paid for bots on Twitter that respond to people like, Student Loan Justice and Debt Collective and whatnot, um, who, these bots get on there when very good arguments are made against the practice, the practices of the lenders, how predatory it is, when any statements are made about cancellation, why that would be a good idea for the US economy and whatnot. These bots, if they're, or maybe they're real people, I don't know, but if they are, they're like complete assholes. But they get
To say
on
the
there
least.
and they just churn out these very canned answers, and they're like, well, you took out the loans, you need to pay them back, and it's like, okay, yeah, in a normal circumstance, right? But
Exactly.
what people don't realize is this is not like a mortgage loan. This is not like a car loan. They don't operate the same way. They're completely outside of the bounds of any checks and balances, um, in my mind. And the institutions like your Argosy University, and even let's say outside of the for-profit college system, which I'm glad has come under the microscope, and I'm glad that many of them have been shut down. So outside of the for-profit system or whatever, you still have these, let's call them very legitimate universities, right? You have the Ivy Leagues, you have, all kinds of universities that are highly regarded in research. My alma mater is like, I don't know, top five in research in the country or something. But whatever. I feel like, you know what I mean? Like the whole system, it doesn't even matter if you're at a for-profit college or not, because all of the institutions know damn well that the FAFSA is a blank check for them. And when you have like thousands of students coming in your doors every year, can you imagine? Like that's millions and millions and millions of dollars. Why would they
Yes.
want uh, any regulation on that? They don't, you know?
Oh,
Um,
no, it's disgusting because I just going back to what you said about, it doesn't operate like a mortgage or a car loan. We get this compounded interest added annually, and it's if our mortgages, if our car loans operated the same as the student loan system, there would be public outrage across the board.
oh yeah.
Nobody would allow this to stand.
Yeah.
But what they've done, those in power, when I say they, I mean legislators, Congress, essentially, is they have turned the people who choose not to go to college or cannot go to college, they have created this narrative that the people who do go to college for whatever reason are the elites.
Right.
And we should be, we're taking these handouts of student loans and we should be paying them back. But what they don't understand is that college is now accessible to many more people than it ever was. I am not, was not raised elite, right? My parents work in construction,
Yeah.
and I was raised sanding and staining doors and hammering nails, you know, just a very modest, normal American
Hardworking
life,
family.
right?
Yeah.
And then I decided I wanted to get a graduate degree, the only way I could have done that because I had a full ride, full academic scholarship for undergrad. And so for grad school, in order for me to go continue to go to school, I had to take out loans. My
Yeah.
parents could not afford to pay for it for me.
Right.
And so when you take out these loans, you think like there's going to be a return on investment. You think like I'm going to be able to get a job that is going to help me to pay off these loans. Well, first of all, my loans are triple what they were supposed to be. And second of all, I don't know if many people realize this, but just because I have a doctorate doesn't mean I make a lot of money. The average doctoral level therapist makes
Yeah.
$60,000 a year. $60,000 a year. So do you think we are buying houses on top of our, mortgage level student loan payments? Absolutely not. Are we driving fancy cars? Absolutely not. My last car, I drove for 15 years until literally it died in the middle of the street. I mean, that this is what's going on. And if it weren't for my husband still being in the military, I don't know what I would do
Yeah.
about having access to medical care you
Oh,
know
that reminds me. I'm sorry. So can we go back to something you said? You said that you joined, so you were incentivized to join the military later in your tenure of being a student. And so you got the GI Bill, yeah?
I did, but here's the thing with the GI Bill is I can't like withdraw the GI Bill money and put that towards my student loans. I can only use it for future schooling that gets paid to another university.
Oh,
So that GI Bill, um,
is
so what happened to me was I I sadly endured um, a hardship and cannot work as a therapist anymore. Ethically, it's too hard for me. Um, so I used my GI Bill to go back to school. So it did come in handy. I used my GI Bill to go back to school and study wine and got a bunch of wine certifications and stuff. But like
awesome.
that gave me kind of another avenue to earn money. But again, the wine industry, you start out making minimum wage, right? So again, it's not like it helped me to, prop up into
Yeah.
some other, social status or anything like that. So kind of it kind of stinks, right? And I've got like this college money sitting there, but it's only for future college.
Yeah.
I can't say, hey, well, what's the minimum this is worth? Maybe we can put that towards my loans. That
Yeah.
would be nice, but
I
no.
that's another thing that I feel needs to be called out, and you
Yeah,
touched on it, is the lack of job placement, the lack of career counseling. I feel that many, many universities, many, many colleges, they do have advisors and counselors and stuff like that, but they are pretty much useless. I mean, um, I had my own academic advisors. I double majored. I was told that if I didn't double major, it would be harder for me to get a job. So it extended my tenure as a student significantly. I was also told that if I wanted to go to grad school and be employed in this particular field, that I needed to do a minor sort of certificate degree, which extended my stay even further. But what it was that extension of that blank check for the university. At the end of the day, my advisors, when I look back on everything, and maybe you can relate with this, there was never a sit down conversation where they just looked me in the eyes and were like, it's going to be really fucking hard, right? They
yeah,
never were completely honest about how competitive the market was, how I might get a job if I'm lucky, and that if I do, and I'm coming in as an entry level kind of employee in this field, which they never talked about, that I should prepare myself to only be making between 18,000 and 25,000 starting. You can't pay off a big amount of student loan debt on that kind of a salary. You can't buy a house. You cannot buy a decent car. You know what I mean? Like all of it piled on. Uh, it's really stressful, I think, for most people. And again, I'm like you. I'm one number of many, many millions of people in the country who I feel have been defrauded, you know.
Absolutely. The career counseling that I received at Argosy is they love to only talk about the most successful cases,
Yeah.
right? So the most successful private practice psychologist who's making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year through private pay. You know, she doesn't have to take insurance, everything. She gets people to pay out of their pocket and she gets to take all of that money home. And then you get out into the field and you realize the hustle and the niche, right? You've got to go into some high-end neighborhoods
Yeah.
and worm your way into their hearts and lives to
Hmm.
get them to pay, you know, $200-300 an hour.
Yeah.
You know, most people are they're billing insurance 150, but insurance is only paying them 60, maybe $50 an hour. But then when you've got overhead, right? You've got to pay for a place, you've got to keep the lights on in that place, right? You're just not taking home enough to pay off several $100,000
Right.
in student loan debt and, you know, save for your own child's college or things of that nature. And when it came to, you know, just like even job hunting, right? We'll help you find a job. They would just print out like back when monster.com was a thing. They'd print out monster.com and be like, here's the jobs that are available in our area. It's like, well, I could have done that.
Yeah.
This is not you helping me. You
Yeah.
know, you said that you had connections in the field, you know. So I mean, just so many layers of deceit, you know, and smoke and mirrors
Yeah.
just to get people to take out that money. Because so my school, Argosy, made Sally Mae their preferred lender. And by doing that, Sally Mae gave Argosy and EDMC, the parent company, kickbacks.
Sure. Yeah.
And so the more we took out, the more kickbacks they got from Sally Mae for all of us taking out these student loans. So it's like, well, no wonder they told us we weren't allowed to have jobs.
Wait, no, yeah, that's the
You
thing.
know?
That's the thing. They set you up right there.
Mm-hmm.
That was the I don't know what you want to call it, like an organized crime. I feel like it's
Yeah.
organized crime. You know?
Yes. And the only lawmaker to ever call it criminal and call for justice is Senator Warren. She is the only person to ever say publicly, why have these people not gone to jail over this?
They
Um,
definitely deserve to.
they deserve to. They absolutely deserve to. But instead, the government just is like, well, we're just going to like make them stop operating. Yeah.
How do they sleep at night? Seriously, because can you think of how many thousands of people each one of those financial aid counselors who is getting probably commissions or something from doling out, you know, selling people on taking out more loans, how many people they effed over? If it was me, I wouldn't be able to live with myself. That's horrible. I don't know.
I, I have spoken with in compiling evidence against Argosy University. I reached out to former recruiters and I've spoken with several. And let me tell you how they the so the lower on the totem pole, the simple recruiters, right? Not the people who were teaching them how to fraudulently recruit, but
Yeah.
just the recruiters who were like, I need a job, I've got to pay bills. Yeah, I'll help people go to college. You know, they're in their own head, they're sold the same lie, right? Like if you're gonna help people achieve their dreams and you're gonna help get them enrolled in college. So they all started off thinking, you know, like I'm going to do good for these people. They're going to get an education because I'm going to help them get into the school. But then the more they got into it, the more they realized the school doesn't care about who I take in. The school isn't even checking to see if they're ready. You know, Argosy was admitting homeless people. I'm sorry, but people need food and shelter before they need student loans,
Yeah.
you know. Um, you know, or people who just were not ready for college. They were totally preying on them. And so the dropout rate after the first semester, particularly the first year, was like 60 to 80%
Yeah.
because they were taking in people who weren't ready, but these people still had to pay back that money.
Yeah.
Right. And so these recruiters, when you get them talking about, what they went through to recruit people and things like that, like they don't sleep, most of them. Now I've met one who does, who sleeps just fine and it makes me sick. But for the most part, they don't sleep because they were duped the same way,
Right.
by the higher up in the organization. And it's awful because it was just like this Ponzi scheme, right? Where it was really the top people who were just really, really gross. And then they just lied all the way down to get buy-in from the people going out and doing their bidding. And a lot of the recruiters, once they discovered what they were doing and how gross this company was, they quit.
Yeah.
Um, but the people who owned Argosy, the people who ran EDMC, I guarantee they sleep just fine on their yachts, paid for by American student loan borrowers.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, it really, I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
and then, I guess the other sort of thing I'm interested in with your experience is how do you feel that this debt, right? Because now it's ballooned, as you said, from 260,000 to over 400,000. Um, has it had negative sort of effects on your mental health? Has it had negative effects on your family life? Has it had any kind of negative effect on your ability to, um, I don't know, I guess, be a mother or, you know what I'm saying? Like, how has it affected you
Yeah.
as a woman and a mother? Yeah.
Every all all the ways, right? So I would say emotionally, the anxiety about every life decision I make in terms of, you know, are we gonna go on vacation for Christmas this year, or are we gonna stay home? Like all of it boils down to the student loan situation.
Yeah.
So there's just it infiltrates everything. When my car died last year in the middle of the road, I mean it was dead. It had almost 300,000 miles on it. It was dead.
Yeah.
It influenced, can I even get a new to me car? I certainly can't buy a new one, but like, can I get a new to me car, or do we make do on one family car
Right.
because of student loans?
Right.
Particularly now, with the Trump administration threatening to do away with save, repay, IDR, all of these programs that allow us to have smaller payments, more affordable payments based on our income.
Right.
That all of these things enter into our mind, and every penny that I bring in to the house is considered student loan money. And so my husband, who's in the Army, we live off that is our grocery, rent, car payment, gas. Like we live 100% off his paycheck, and everything I bring in is to feed the monster. It's to feed student loan debt.
So
And
nothing, nothing, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just,
yeah,
it boggles the mind. You're a two income family, right?
well,
I-
actually, right now, I am not working because I have a special needs son.
Okay.
And so I have zero income right now. So I'm actually in forbearance.
Okay.
Um, I'm also awaiting my decision on my borrower defense application. I entered that application right around the time my son was born, um, so that I could go into forbearance. Well, yes, I'm accruing interest, but I'm not making payments. But again, if that application is denied, then I need to be ready to figure out like how am I going to pay this, you know. And fortunately, my son starts kindergarten in August, and he'll be able to go to school, so I can at least hopefully get a part-time job or something, just in case my bar defense application is denied, then I can pay towards student loans.
So, couple things. You um, are on forbearance, and I believe the interest it continues in
Yes.
forbearance because it's not a deferment. So
No, yeah, I'm accruing interest at the rate of about $4,000.
a month, $4,000 in interest a month. Right. Yeah. So anyone out there who thinks that student loan debt is just like a car loan and you took the loan out and you need to pay it back, you need to check yourself and do
Yeah.
your research because these loans don't operate the same way. Can you talk about that a little bit? What is that? How does it work? Is there a sort of statute of limitations around applying for that? Is that done or what's the deal?
So it is in limbo right now, but you would go to the federal student aid website
Okay.
and log into your federal student aid account, and then just put in a little search bar borrower defense application. It'll pop up an application. You fill that out through FSA, and basically what they're going to ask you is, did your school lie to you when they were recruiting you? Did they obscure information, false advertising? Did they lie to you about job placement rates? Um, or did they lie to you about how long your program was going to take? All these different things. And then at the end, they ask you, what is the financial harm that has been done to you? And a lot of people oftentimes will put their student loan amount, but also, think about the underemployment or unemployment,
Yeah.
right? Things of that nature. So you fill out this application and submit it. And right now, as it stands, there is really no timeline on when current applications are going to be reviewed, because what's happening is the current reconciliation bill, the budget reconciliation bill that is being duked out in Congress right now, they're looking at making huge cuts to this program. So right now, the benefit of the doubt goes to the students,
Mhm.
and not the school. Well, they want to change the rules to where the student basically has to show beyond a shadow of a doubt in a court of law style, in their application, that they were defrauded.
Sure.
And so what this would be going back to the 2019 rules that were put in place under the first Trump administration. Those rules for borrower defense resulted in a 97% denial rate for borrower defense.
Sure.
And so that's what they want to go back to.
Sure they did. Yeah.
And so it's, again, this all kind of comes, it's just really important for folks to be aware of what's going on in Congress right now, because that is going to impact how a borrower defense application is going to be looked at under, once it's being reviewed. Is if we allow Congress to pass the budget as is, we're going to revert back to the 2019 rules, where it's near impossible to get an application approved. So you got to call your representative.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's super important. And I think that there are so many student loan borrowers out there who are hurting so bad, so bad. Um,
It
I,
it's
we need a movement. We need like a mass
Yes.
movement.
Well, so that's what we're trying to do. So I for the last year, have been working really hard, volunteering somewhat with the Debt Collective, but somewhat kind of just working with Argosy borrowers to create a movement. And so I've paired up with Ashley Pizzuti. She does work for the Debt Collective, but this is kind of her pet project called Borrower Offense. And borrower offense is our way of saying borrower defense is broken. Borrowers need to go on the offense, and we need to
That's
do a
what it
full court press
is.
into Congress to let them know that we are hurting and the student loan system is broken. And so if folks go to borrowedoffense.com, they will see that everything that's been happening with borrower defense, the FSA application, and they'll see what we're trying to do now. And we have been advised by every member of Congress that we have spoken to that y'all, you have to get loud and you have to tell your personal story. There's a lot of shame brought about by the government wants us to feel ashamed for taking out this money. And so we don't talk about it, right? We don't talk about how much debt we're in. We don't talk about how much money we borrowed. But we need to talk about it, and we need to send our stories to our congressional representatives to make it real. Like, I am your constituent. Here's how much money I owe. Here's how this is hurting me.
Yeah.
Here's how we need to save IDR. We need to save the SAVE plan. We need to save borrower defense. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we need more people to be sharing their stories, starting YouTube channels, writing
Yes.
papers, books. Are you an academic? Can you start researching this stuff?
Right.
Collating interviews like mine,
Yes.
use them as
Yes.
data. Because what do you think this is at the end of the day? Do you think, I guess this is kind of a sociological question. Do you think this is a manifestation of the government and how broken it is, or do you feel like this is more like capitalism and all of the sort of faults that go along with capitalism, or do you think it's a combination of both? I don't know,
Yeah.
or anything
I,
else. I don't know.
I think it's a combination of both, right? So I'm reading this book. It's called Burdened, and it's all about the history of student loans. And Congress, essentially, if I can like super paraphrase how it all came about, is racism, classism, sexism, all came together to form student loans, and then the student loan system has been perpetuated to keep people down, right? So, even if you are in a high paying job, if you have a high amount of student loan debt, you're not able to rise above and
Right.
buck the system, right?
Yeah.
And but then also when Sally Mae came about in the 70s and student loans kind of became a private commodity that now is making money. Sally Mae was first had their first IPO on Wall Street funded by Goldman Sachs.
Mm.
Who else? Right.
Mhm.
And so that really solidified how student loans exist to profit off the backs of students, people who are just trying to live the American dream. You get an education, you can rise above. That's what we're told.
Mhm.
But no, these student loan companies, came along and said, I don't think so. We're going to make a profit and we're going to make a big one. So, that's capitalism, but it started with Congress, and Congress didn't want people to rise up. So they continued to perpetuate this system, and they don't want to get rid of this system because an educated population is going to take the power of the white man,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Right.
And give it back to the people.
That is the biggest threat. Yeah.
So, yeah,
So what
both.
is the book like? What does the book say? What is the argument? I should get in touch with the author. Maybe I should do that. I should interview the author. What does the book say? Like, what's the argument behind? What proof do they show that that it started in Congress and that Congress was trying to prevent, trying to use it as a way to sort of prevent certain types of people from.
So they talk about, the congressional members who originally wanted free college for all, and they met opposition by basically the racist South. Again, paraphrasing, but that's essentially what it was. The racist South did not want free college for all because that meant Black people could go to college. So then that's when they came up with the idea of student loans. Is, well, we will give the student the money and they can take it anywhere they want to any college that will accept them,
Mm.
right? And think back, colleges were not accepting Black students. And so it wasn't the government discriminating against Black people because they could have the student loans. They just need to find a school that will let them in, right? So that satisfied the racist South and also satisfied this whole notion of like everybody can go to college. But of course, again, this was back when college was like maybe $500 a year.
Sure.
Okay, so these loans were small, easily paid back, and a college degree back then actually led to improved earnings. It wasn't really until the 80s that a college degree didn't necessarily guarantee anything. So, they Congress wasn't able to pass free college for all
Mm.
because of racism.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really gross. And then to go back to where we started, talking about women and student loans.
Yeah.
Um, One of the major, I guess, pushing points back against free student, not free student loans, but student loans for all was, that led to women going to school, going to college in increasingly higher numbers. But because they were taking out student loans to do so, what they were doing by women going to college is they were decreasing their ability to get married because who wants to marry a woman with debt?
Mm.
And so that was their argument for women not going to school and women not being able to take out loans is because it decreased our value
So
on the
we'll
dating market.
so we'll let you go to school. You
Yeah.
can go to school, but you're going to be basically taken off like the marriage market.
Right.
Yeah, I can see
Yeah.
that. That's very, that's a very like good old boy kind of
Yeah.
attitude. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm, that's interesting.
And
Yeah.
we've dug so back in the 70s, economists started calling bullshit on the whole student loan system, saying this is going to crash. This is a very bad system. This is going to crash because they started seeing people defaulting in higher and higher numbers 50 years ago. And so they started raising the red flag saying, this is not good. This is not good. We need to stop this, guys. We need a new system.
Mhm.
Congress said no, because again, they kept perpetuating this narrative that free college for all meant a handout to the wealthy. And, they didn't want the elite going to college on the backs of the blue collar worker,
Mm.
right?
Oh,
So we
sure.
can't have free college for all. These people need to pay their own way. That way they fully invest in their education. If it doesn't cost them anything, they won't be invested. And so, that's why we don't have free college, is because they think in order for us to care about our education, it needs to cost us our soul. And but I mean, we're headed there's a huge bubble, just like the housing crisis
Oh
back
yeah.
in 2006. We have a student loan crisis, and this bubble is about to burst.
Yes, it is.
And they need to fix the system. I am of the opinion, and based on a lot of reading and research that I've done over the years into this, is we need to abolish all student loan debt.
Yep.
We need free college for all. As long as you're making good grades, you get to keep going to school. That
Hmm.
should be the only requirement. Other countries around the world do this, and I'm pretty sure they're doing all right.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I don't, I, I, I don't see any reason to keep plugging our fingers in the hole of the dam that is student loans.
Hmm.
Let it break. abolish student loan debt,
Yep.
um, free college for all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, all that prohibitive policy is going to do is further oppress the already oppressed.
Right.
Um, and I mean, don't we want a successful country, right? Right? Because that's really what it boils down to. We initiated
Yes.
student loans in the beginning when we made this all kind of start rolling. We did it after the launch of Sputnik, and we wanted to be competitive to Russia. We wanted to make sure that we were exploiting the intellectual capabilities and faculties of the most gifted people, even if it meant that we were allowing poor people into our universities. And I
Yeah.
feel like we have to. I mean, look at all these other countries are offering free education. Germany is a very successful European country that has its shit completely together, and they offer free college. You can
Yep.
go over there and be educated for free. And it's a good education. It's not lackluster in any way, you know.
Yep.
And I feel like in this country we have forgotten so much.
Absolutely. Like if you go back to when the GI Bill first came out after World War II, what they found is that for every dollar they invested in the education of these veterans who came home from war, those veterans then contributed $12 back to the economy. The government made their money back on that investment 12 fold.
Yeah.
That has decreased now because of the scam schools and the for-profit schools that have entered into the realm of giving these fraudulent degrees. But if we're properly accrediting schools, making sure that gainful employment is a thing, um, we will reap the benefits. I, Nobody's harmed by being educated,
No.
you know?
No, our country is made stronger. Our technology is improved. We are more competitive on the international market. I mean, there is literally nothing to lose here. And, for anyone who says, well, I don't want to pay for that, I don't want to pay that many taxes. Um, I just, really at the end of the day, it's, I guess, a difference in moral perspective, I guess. I don't know, do you want, are you, because this is supposedly a Christian country, right? I mean,
Right.
I'm going to go there because I feel like we should. Um,
Yeah.
if we live in a Christian country, are we living by our values? Are we really living by our values? You know?
Right. Clothe the needy, feed the poor. If you have anything to give, you share it with the people around you. Like
Yeah.
it's not about Christianity does not talk about hoarding wealth. Actually, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure the Bible says it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle
Yes.
than it is for a rich man to get into heaven. And I grew up in the church, and that was hammered home to me, but I didn't realize the irony of that statement until I looked around me at all of these people with all of this money espousing Christian beliefs and not walking the walk, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting too. There's a whole can of worms that we probably shouldn't open, but that would be a good conversation to have about, theology and prosperity gospel and stuff like that, which is just like completely neoliberal bullshit. Um, at the end of the day. So yeah, I think that evil very much exists in the world. I really feel like it's very visible, especially when you zoom in a sort of, you look at this issue. You can zoom out too, right? You can see it as a whole, and then you can zoom in like we're doing right now. I'm talking to you as one individual with a story, And you can see that all of these separate stories all have the same things in common. And the things in common are harm, harms that people are suffering as a result of predatory lending,
Yes.
predatory policies, predatory, um, uh, I don't know, what do I want to say? I guess, there is something to be said for, what the Bible actually speaks to this. Jesus said something along the lines, I'm paraphrasing badly, but Jesus said something along the lines of, if you know what the right thing to do is, but you don't do it, you're sinning, or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, we have a lot of people in government. We have a lot of Congress members. We have a lot of politicians who are in office working their butts off, but, working every day and they know that people are hurting. And I'm going to say, based on my intuition, 98% positive that they're fully aware of this issue. And for some reason, many of them are not speaking up about it and they're not doing anything about it because I think they're probably getting paid by the lenders. Um,
And that's another episode, friend. Oh my goodness, the number of people in Congress who are making money off the for-profit system
mhm.
is disgusting.
It is.
They are making money off of it, and they are placing money ahead of people.
Yep.
Um, it, the whole system is so broken.
We had a Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. I don't care if she's a Democrat. I don't identify as a Democrat or Republican, so whatever. But our Speaker of the House was making millions of dollars on insider trading in
Yeah.
office. And I just, I see that as corruption. That's obvious
She made
corruption.
she made a lot of money off the for-profit industry too. She had very strong ties to Perdicio, which
Okay.
is a for-profit company that owns multiple schools around the country, including Brooks Institute. Well, they don't anymore, but they did own Brooks Institute. So yeah, no, her hands are very, very dirty in
Yeah.
this mess.
And she's
Very
just one
dirty.
of them. She's one
Mhm. One
of many, many politicians in Washington, D.C., working for the people.
for the people. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's why we need to keep having these conversations, and we need to spread these conversations around the internet. We need to raise this public awareness. So I really love what you're doing
Thank you.
to get this conversation started and keep it going. Because that's the only way we're going to make changes, if people start talking and keep talking about this. The government needs to know that we're not going to stand for it. If we sit silent, then it's easy for them to ignore us.
Yeah.
But, we have the power of speech in this country for now. And so we need to use it.
Yes. 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah. You can see my story on Borrower Offense if you go to our website. My story is under the veterans page.
Okay.
Um, so you can read more about like why I'm not a psychologist anymore.
Okay. Thank you, Valerie. This has been spectacular. You are a font of knowledge. And do you want to list any contact information for people on how to get a hold of you for any of these issues or anything like that?
Yeah, so our website, Borrower Offense, and also if you just borroweraoffense@gmail.com is our shared email address for this movement. So if you want to tell your story, add it to our website. We have a form you can fill out on the website, or you can email us and we can do a video story, whatever works for you. But definitely reach out. We'd love to hear your story and help you get into contact with your representatives so that your representatives can hear your story.
Yes, that's the most important thing.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm
Thank
very
you for having me. You have no idea.
thankful for you to take this time and share your personal story with me and with everybody else. So I look forward to talking to you again, and
Yes,
I wish you the best, and we'll
thank
talk
you.
to you soon.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
good day.
you. You too.
Bye.
Bye bye.